Hey, good morning, everybody.
Morning, man.
Happy Easter. You guys enjoying your Easter morning? Excited and fired up? Yeah? Something like that? Okay. It's an exciting day, right? Come on.
Yeah.
It's an exciting day that we get to celebrate. It's a hugely momentous occasion. The most important thing that's ever happened, ever. Jesus dying, being buried, resurrecting again from the dead, offering us salvation. It's something that I feel like we maybe will never fully understand, maybe never fully appreciate in the way that we ought to, but this is a day that we get to celebrate, that we get to talk about it. And it's interesting, right, because a day like this comes around all the time, every year, but it's so easy for us just to kind of take it for granted and not really think about it, but it is a hugely important thing. And I think sometimes we think that, holidays are, we were just talking about it a little bit before the service, that sometimes we think the holidays are like, holidays are silly because they represent something that we should be doing all the time. But you look in the Bible and even look in the Old Testament, and there were things that the Israelites were supposed to be celebrating all the time, but God still gave them holidays. In some case, week-long holidays to focus and to celebrate about some of the things that God has done for them. And so that's what we're going to do today, and that's why we're here, is to celebrate what God has done, what He's offered for us. We've been going through the book of Nehemiah, but we're not going to do that today. We're going to set that aside. We're going to talk about Easter a little bit. We'll get back into Nehemiah next week. And as we start this conversation and start talking about Easter, I want you to think about this question. What does the empty tomb, what does the cross, what do these things mean to you? What is their significance? Because I think these are some of the most compelling images when we talk about Easter. And yet sometimes we just don't even have this idea of what they mean. When I was much younger, I had this necklace that was given to me. And it was, I'm not a huge fan of wearing jewelry. And in fact, if you looked at the necklace, I'm wearing it right now, if you looked at the necklace, it has all these symbols on it that represent, honestly, a faith background that I don't believe in at all. And so it's weird to think that I would wear this necklace day in, day out, even though it's something that I don't necessarily agree with, and I don't even like jewelry. But here's the thing, right? It was a necklace that was my grandfather's, right? It was given to me, and in fact, it's the second one that was given to me. The first one that was given to me right after he died, I actually went swimming in the Arctic Ocean and lost it. And I had to tell my grandma that I lost it, sorry, I lost your dead husband's necklace in the Arctic Ocean. Sorry about that. And then she had another one that he also wore and then brought it out to me. And so now I'm wearing the second one, and now I guard it very fiercely, and I very rarely take it off. And so this necklace, again, is something, to me, the jewelry doesn't mean anything, the inscriptions on it doesn't mean anything, but because it was my grandpa's, it means something to me. My grandpa gave it meaning. And as we think about Easter, and we think about these images of the cross, we think about the images of the empty grave, right? Those things in themselves are meaningless. A cross is nothing. It's two sticks of wood stuck together. An empty grave is just a hole in the ground or something cut out of rock. But what gives it meaning is Jesus. What gives the cross and what gives the empty grave meaning is Jesus and His sacrifice for us and what He has done for us. So much so that if you look into the early church, you look into early church history, you turn to the book of Acts, you see this talked about over and over and over again. This was the message that they shared over and over again, was this idea of the cross and the idea of the empty grave and the meaning that Jesus assigned to it. And we'll just look at one example of this in Acts 2, Acts 2, verse 22. It says, "Fellow Israelites, listen to this. Jesus of Nazareth was a man accredited by God to you by miracles, wonders, and signs which God did among you through Him, as you yourselves know. This man was handed over to you by God's deliberate plan and foreknowledge, and you, with the help of wicked men, put him to death by nailing him to the cross. But God raised him from the dead, freeing him from the agony of death, because it was impossible for death to keep its hold on him." If you read through the book of Acts, this formula is repeated over and over and over again. It's in Acts 2 here, it's in Acts 3, it's in Acts 4, it's Acts 5. The formula is this: you killed Jesus by putting him on the cross, but God raised him from the dead. And the result is the ability to be free. The ability to be forgiven, to not have to experience death in the same way. And in other passages like this in the book of Acts, the disciples talk about forgiveness and mercy and grace. And so this image of the cross, this image of the empty tomb, which at this point in time had totally different meanings for people, was now given meaning by Jesus, by what he has done for us. And it now becomes the symbol of salvation. This symbol of mercy and grace, this focal point of a faith that has changed the lives of untold numbers of people. Our faith, what we celebrate today. And so now these images have meaning, real meaning in our lives today. But I'm honestly that kid that never stopped asking why. I'm that annoying kid that says, well, why this, why that, why is it like this? And so I ask myself, if there's meaning to this cross, there's meaning to this empty grave, why did God decide to assign this sort of meaning to these things? Why the cross? Why the empty grave? Because when you really think about it, did the cross have to happen? Was that the only way that God could have offered the forgiveness of sins to people? Of course not. I mean, he's God. He can do whatever he wanted. He could just do a Thanos snap in a good way and just save everybody, and it was no big deal, right? It was just done. Forgiveness, right? So why these things? Why the cross? Why the resurrection? Why did he assign these meanings to these things? And I think part of the answer lies here in Romans chapter 3, verse 25. It says, God presented Christ as a sacrifice of atonement through the shedding of his blood to be received by faith. He did this to demonstrate his righteousness. Because in his forbearance he had left the sins committed beforehand unpunished. He did this to demonstrate his righteousness at the present time, so as to be just and the one who justifies those who have faith in Jesus. So God sent Christ to demonstrate his righteousness. God, in all of his wisdom, thought through all of the possibilities, like Dr. Strange, and was thinking about how could these things be offered. You see where my mind is, guys. It's coming up. Anyway, he was thinking through all of these different possibilities of what could be done to offer salvation, what could be done to offer forgiveness, and he chose these things. Why? So that he could demonstrate it. He saw that it was not enough for people just to know about his forgiveness. It wasn't enough for people just to understand that forgiveness has been offered. No, he knew that we needed it to be demonstrated to us. And I get it, because Natalie, she tries to explain things to me all the time about like what a room might look like. We do this kind of refurbishment or renovation, or tell me about something. She's trying to tell me about something that she's seen and she's describing to me, and my mind is just a total blank slate. What I need is for her to show it to me. So now she draws pictures, or it actually takes me into the place that she's talking about, if she can, because I just don't get it, right? I need a demonstration, so I understand this. Right? God saw that we needed this sacrifice demonstrated to us. So one, we could understand and see the heinous cost of our sin, and two, in demonstration, recognize and realize that this sin, that this death could be defeated. And so God chose to act. God chose to do something about it. His offer of grace was completed through action, through Christ's action on the cross and through the action of the resurrection. And so the result for us is, again, forgiveness. The offer of forgiveness. Forgiveness, which is one of the most important things to any relationship. Forgiveness, without forgiveness, there are no meaningful, real relationships. Without forgiveness, you can't have something lasting in relationship with others or with God. But God's forgiveness and following his example of forgiveness is what allows us to have a relationship with him. It's what allows us to have relationships with others that are meaningful and real and joyful. It's what makes these possible, is forgiveness. And it's these relationships that bring us real joy. And so you think about this incredible gift of forgiveness that changes everything, changes our relationships, changes our status before God, what should our response to that incredible gift be? What should that look like? Well, let's talk about that. Here's the thing. If God didn't passively offer his grace to us, then our response should not be to passively offer him faith. God's offer of grace wasn't passive, and so nor should our offer of faith be passive. No, if God extended his grace to us through action, it only makes sense that our response, our faith response, should include action. Actually doing something. James 2 verse 21 says, "Was not our father Abraham considered righteous for what he did when he offered his son Isaac on the altar?" You see that his faith and his actions were working together, and his faith was made complete by what he did. And the scripture was fulfilled that said, Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness, and he was called God's friend. You see that a person is considered righteous by what they do and not by faith alone. Just as God's grace was completed through action, so too is our faith completed by action. Faith is not just something that we have, it's something that we do. It's something that we put into practice. But here's the problem. I think in general, we would rather consider ourselves faithful people and not do anything. That's much easier. It's much easier to consider yourself faithful and not do anything. The thing is we want to be saved, but we don't want to be changed. And so as a result, so much of Christianity today looks no different than the world around it. Our relationships look the same. Our selfishness looks the same. Our greed and our materialism and our pursuit of whatever looks the same as the world around it. How does your faith stand out? How does your faith stand out against the world in which you live? How is it different? How are you different as a result of your faith? Jesus didn't die and raise from the dead again for us to do nothing. Jesus died and raised again so that we would do something for him. 1 John 3 verse 18, a very famous passage here that I think captures this. It says, "Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth." And so starting on this Easter Sunday and moving forward, what will you do? What will you do differently? How will you put your faith into action? And honestly, this doesn't matter. This question doesn't matter if you've been around forever, if you've been around church forever, or if this is the first time that you've ever stepped foot into a church. The question remains, what will you do? How will you put this faith into action? When we put our faith into action, we become a light. We stand out against the world. We look different. And our faith in action can change lives. It can change our own life. It can change the lives of those around us. So again, what will you do? How will it be different? And if you're not sure what that looks like, if you're not sure what your action should be, you gotta get into the Bible. Gotta dive in. Start your faith journey, continue your faith journey in the scriptures. And I'm telling you, please talk to somebody here. Ask somebody to get into the scriptures with you. If somebody asks you to do some Bible study, say yes. Dive into your faith journey. Pursue that relationship with God and figure out what it looks like for you to put your faith into action. And as we decide to live differently, as we go about our journey, we do things differently. Let's see how God uses us to accomplish his will. Let's see how putting your faith into action will change your life and will change the lives of others around you for his glory. Amen? Amen.